Picking up where we left off last time, we calculated the flow by Manning's equation of at bank full stage of 3 feet and a flood prone stage at 6 feet, and we came up with bank full flow was 520 cubic feet per second, and flood prone was, where is it, 2479 cubic feet per second. We can, for a stream, just like we did for precipitation, we can define and calculate a return period of it. So we look at the historical data and we can plot it, and this is plotted the exceedance probability and the non-exceedance probability. Okay, so let's find our values here first of all. So the bank full was at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's this one right here. So somewhere right in there. So the exceedance of that would be about non-exceedance. Oh, top is exceedance. So it's about 70% exceedance probability, or 30-some%. Wait, where's 70? No, this is 60, this is 70. So it's 60-some, say 63 exceedance probability, and so 37 non-exceedance. So the exceedance probability for bank full flow, I'm going to say, what did I just say, 63%? So that means there's a probability each year, it's probable that that flow will be exceeded. So about the 2/3 of the time. So if we put that in terms of a return interval, the return interval is about 1.6 years. So the inverse of that, so about so it's going to happen about once every 1.6 years. So that is, and that's a typical value, anywhere between interval of 1 year to 2 years are pretty typical. Now it's going to change over time. If we have a lot of development in the area, then those floods are going to happen more often, and like we said in the first test, you'll want to update the data as you get that data. So that's for the bank full. For the at twice the bank full depth, which we called the flood prone area, that was, what was our number again? 2479. Now for twice the bank full depth, or the flood prone area, it's going to be at 2479. So 2479 is going to be, this is 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and so we have log scale works. It's going to be kind of maybe in there. So I go up here, and the exceedance probability is what, 17%? And then the return period is going to be about between 5 and 10, about 7 years maybe. So I'll go down here, 17%. Oh, I'd written that in already. And then I said maybe about 7-year return period. So it's not going to be there quite as often. So that's one thing we can do with that, is to look at what our return periods for bank full flow and then twice bank full flow, if we have that data. Now to classify this stream, we're going to go to a couple other measures of a stream. These are measures specifically to classify a stream. One is the entrenchment ratio. Entrenchment ratio is defined as the width of the flood-prone area to the bank full width. So the width of the flood-prone area was the I'm looking at it. FP width 105. 105 feet divided by 40 feet. 105 divided by 40 feet. So that's a 2.6. Another measure we can look at is the width over the depth. So this is you'll in the Rosgen book you'll see it just says that. That's at bankful. That's a little at mark. Bankful it's talking about. So at bankful it was 105 feet width over a depth of bankful was 40 foot width over depth of 3 feet equals 13 1/3. Slope was given as 0.0024. The bed material was listed as gravel. Okay, so now we're going to jump off and says what do you think the stream type is, and it references a website from EPA, and I'm going to bring that here. Fundamentals of the Rosgen Stream Classification System. I cut out a section where I was just poking around that website, but I encourage you to look at the website. It walks through the classification system in order. We can come down. This is actually, I'm going back to the handout. This is in the handout. This shows the basic division of stream types, and you can see it's a function of the slope. So a steep slope, you'll have a stream that just kind of shoots straight down and just kind of makes a V shape in there. When we get flatter, they tend to go back and forth, and you'll see like a C that shows a little deposit there, and it kind of gouges out the sides there, and so you'll see this deeper pool here, and it'll go back and forth between a riffle and a pool. D and E are braided channels, a couple different variations of it. This one just kind of has a bunch of gravel bars in this. This one where it's actually cutting through different paths in the gravel floor. E is also pretty flat, and it'll just kind of meander back and forth like that. So we can divide it that way, and we can further divide it into the back up on the page there. We can further divide it into different types, subtypes, based on the sediment material in the bottom of the stream, bedrock to silt clay. And so the slope there. And then it also gives some other numbers there. So our entrenchment ratio, I think we calculated it, right? Width to depth ratio, and the sinuosity. Sinuosity is defined as the length of the stream. So again, here if I follow the E, follow the stream, I'm traveling a lot farther than if I just shoot down. So it's the sinuosity is the length of the stream over the channel length. So let's go back up to our handout here, and maybe we'll come back to the EPA classification version of the Rosgen classification system is. So if I look at these, so width to depth of slope of 0.024, gravel bottom, width to depth of 13, entrenchment ratio of 2.6. Okay, let's keep those numbers in our head here a little bit, and we'll go down here, and we have a slope of 0.024. Okay, that's 2%. All right, one more time. Slope of 2%, no, not 2%, 0.2% or 0.0024. So 0.001 to 0.002, we can find that in C and D. Above that, E's, yeah, it's a little higher than that. Okay, so C or D is in there. Width to depth, R was 13, so it's greater than 12 there. D would be very high, so it's probably not that. The sinuosity, we didn't measure the sinuosity, we just took a cross section. We'd have to look at the stream as a whole. We can go back to the map and try to make some measurements of that. The slightly entrenched is entrenchment ratio of greater than 2.2. Ours was 2.6. So the other ones are less than that. These really are braided. D is braided channel or multiple channels. So really, seems to me that we are focusing in on C. And if we go further, we can see that we have a gravel bottom, and so that would give us a C4 and 0.001, yep. So right in about a C4. So I'm going to say we're at a C4. And the go back down here to our handout. So C again is this has some meandering, a riffle pool geometry, and I have a thing in here. I found this graph. So does this stream tend to look like this? Hint, yes. Okay, so this is a C type stream. Does this, and I think probably Yellow Breeches is also a C type. Meanders around, and it goes, and as it makes this turn, it digs out a pool there. Then it drops down. If we're looking at the cross section of the stream, the water goes downhill. So overall, we're going downhill, but it's going along stones here. Then it drops. It turns the corner. There's a pool there. Goes another riffle along stones. Turns another corner. There's a pool there. So it digs it out under the bank there, and then with the pool cross section looks like this, where it's cut to one side and slopes up on the other, whereas a riffle cross section is fairly uniform across there. And you can get these center bars and point bars on their gravel bars. So a C4 tends to look like that, and we can get some more information. A C4, we said here, has a moderate to high sinuosity greater than 1.2. Okay, that doesn't help us there. The atypical, in this figure he says a C-type stream has a moderate to high sinuosity greater than 1.2. Elsewhere in his book, he does say the average of these is about 1.9. So something greater than 1.2. So about 1.9 is a typical value. Sinuosity about 1.9. Meander width ratio is the ratio of the belt width. So if it's going back and forth, there's the width to that over the bankful width. And if I look down here on our page we're going to do in a second here, I pasted a couple figures on here. So some of the measurements we can make are the belt width. So as this is going back and forth, what is the end of this sine wave to the end of this sine wave, side to side, and what's that compared to the bankful width? So that's the belt width. We can also come up with the arc length along there, the arc angle. And so anyway, we were talking about the meander width. This says for a C about 4 to 20, typical value or average value is about 11. So we can know what this stream should be naturally, and if we want to restore it, we can try to make that happen. So I'm going to jump up to our this. So we said we can say, okay, so this one we have a straightened section of a stream, put concrete or riprap or something in there, or just channeled it and made it straight, and we don't like the look of it, might be having erosion issues, it might be incising, we might have sediment issues, but so for whatever reason we want to restore it to what it wants to do naturally. And it wants to, we said, has a sinuosity probably about 1.9-ish. I say probably. Dave Roskin is the guru of this stuff, and not all his projects work out. Sometimes he tries stuff and it doesn't work. We said this one, Vanderbilt wave, is about 11. And the radius of curvature, we can take that from we can kind of work this out with the sinuosity, and we can come up with those go together, meander width, sinuosity, radius of curvature, and we can come up with a number. Now I'm scared to put a number in because it might not work out, but let's say, so this length is 600 feet. Let's say our radius of curvature is 150. I have no idea if that actually fits that sinuosity, that meander length. And then maybe if that's maybe a 400-foot wavelength. So again, our C channels tends to look like this, and we want to return it. Where's my mouse? Return it to that. So I can just start sketching out my new channel, and I put those numbers in, and I want it to go, I don't know, I'm sure Matt Van Epps, when he does this, takes more than 2 minutes to do it. But so I kind of want to make it happen kind of like that. And then I want to give it some pools. It'll naturally make it, but if I'm going to restore it, I'm going to start out with there. And then the riffles are going to be in between there. I'm going to plant some riffle vegetation. I can actually use the vegetation as some of my structures. I can put rocks in there, and I want to, if I look at this cross section, I want to dig it out like kind of like that and slope it up. If this is the stream surface, this is what deeper on this side. So I can use this information and do calculations. And again, this is the belt width. So it's winding up the channel. So question here is, even if you keep sections of the existing channels path, and talk with Matt Van Epps, you can't change everything. So there might be a structure, a house, a building right there. You can't just remove it and put that in there. So there's a lot of considerations there. You're going to try to do this, but even if you keep the existing channels path, what might you do to the cross section? So you can put some rocks in there. So if you have a channelized channel that looks like this, and you're going to take that out of there, well, you can at least give it a little spot where, give it a little slope to one side and then up the other. So the example, one of Matt's projects that I was at a number of times looking at, they had a busy area and they had rocks that just made a channel like that. So what he did was he put even bigger rocks here and then cut this side, then planted grass here and planted some trees along there. So even if you can't do it completely, you might be able to do a little bit with the cross sections. Do you anticipate the landowners of the creek will be cooperative? Quite often, yeah. A lot of these projects are initiated by the landowners because they're losing their land. They're owning less land because it's getting cut out by erosion. But if you're going to say, so if this guy has a farm here, or maybe if it's a bigger river, maybe he doesn't even own that land, or he doesn't have rights to that land. It's part of the river, but he's been farming this land for a long time. So his land maybe ends up here, and he's been able to farm this land, and you're going to take away some of the land there. So landowners have a legitimate concern there. So they might be taking their land. They might, in general, if you turn it to a more natural state, you're going to lower the risk of flood, but it might increase the risk of flood for his land, or when the water rises, it might do different stuff than it did before. Okay. The last thing I wanted you to do, and this is the handout, it's on the handout, but it's also an assignment, and I'm not going to go through all these. You can either, on the assignment, type them in Canvas, copy and paste, put a document up there, fill out this sheet with pen, and then scan it or photo it. But some of these terms here I want to go through. You may have not heard before. The thalweg, that's a cool term. That's the main flow path. Now, if you look it up, you'll probably find a better definition, more precise definition. But when we're talking about the thalweg of a stream, we're talking about going out back here. This one shows it pretty good here, I think. See this dotted line here? So the main flow path of a stream is the thalweg, the main stream. Not always quite the center of the stream, but the main flow path of the stream. Some other terms here that I will tell you, and then the other ones we can look up. I want to see if you all come up with a difference between ephemeral and intermittent. I always use those interchangeably, but someone who knows better than I informed me there is a slight definition difference between those. It both have to do with a stream that doesn't have water in it all the time. The other one I want to mention, just in general, is the term riparian. Riparian refers to a stream. When we think of the riparian zone, we think of the stream side. Going back to the map in Flint Creek, so in general, riparian just means referring to a stream or the side of the stream right next to the stream. We talk about the riparian zone. You can see the riparian zone in a lot of cases here. It's wooded around there. It's forested. Now that's necessary because we're getting down in the stream. That's the area that's flooded. You can't really farm that. But also it's important to the stream. One of the best management practices to protect streams and protect runoff into streams and the loads into streams is riparian zone buffers, where you can't do anything in the buffer. So this one here, for example, this is getting pretty close to the creek there, and they might have, and you can see they've cleared some trees on this side here, so they might be required to or encouraged to make a buffer there. Also, cattle can, if they get in a stream, they can mess it up too. So one of the BMPs is to protect the riparian area from the cattle. While I was talking about that other one, I thought of this one case where this was all kind of a swampy area, and actually there was like a endangered species or something, fish in there, and they developed this and they paved it, and the first thing to go in was this car dealership here. And so this went from a swampy area to a car dealership, and you can see it's right up against a creek here. Matter of fact, it looks like they covered the creek or moved the creek there. And they built all this paved area, and like the first time they had a big storm, they had a lot of flooding. And after they had that flooding, they thought, oh, the problem is those darn trees are in the way that keeps the water from running into the trees. So they went and cut down all the trees along in the riparian zone along the banks there, and which is the worst thing you can do. Trees are very important for holding the banks up and for preventing flooding. So they kind of made a mess of that. I don't know what's happened over the years. This facility over here, they actually built for their runoff a constructed wetland back here to treat it more, to handle the runoff and treat it before it goes into the stream. I'm not really sure what regulations this auto dealership had to put into it, but they had some problems. Okay, back to our handout. I'll let you look these up and figure them out. Remember, these are in reference to stream morphology, stream restoration. Anthropogenic means man-made, but what are we talking about in streams? So look up these if you don't already know them, and put them in the assignment. Reference site is if you can't find that, that's a site that is pretty close to natural for the stream we're looking at, or one that's very similar, so we can look at the reference site, and if we're trying to restore a stream, say, hey, let's try to make it look like that reference site. Anyway, we'll stop there. I do encourage you for the 9th time to watch the Matt Van Epps video. It's really good, and then see you around.